Alright, what's going on, guys? Today I want to talk about MSRP. I feel like people are confused about this. There's been a lot of misconceptions about what this means. It's old news, this happened a while ago, but I've just seen, a lot of people talking about it and what the effects are going to be, and I just feel like a lot of people don't really understand, what MSRP is and what it means to not have it in Magic the Gathering products. So this isn't news, like I said, this is old, but if you didn't hear, Magic the Gathering products are no longer going to have MSRPs, and if you don't know what MSRP is, it is the manufacturer's suggested retail price. So basically, if a company releases a product like Wizards of the Coast releasing Magic the Gathering products, they would make an MSRP, which was the suggested retail price that they recommended that retailers sell it for. Now this was, as the name suggests, just a suggestion. It wasn't enforced, it wasn't, mandatory, and it didn't have any final say in what that product would be sold for. Sometimes products would be sold above MSRP, sometimes below. The price of any product is always going to be determined by supply and demand. It's how much of it is there and how much do people want it, and that will cause that product to settle at the actual retail price that, people are actually going to pay for it. So for example, a booster box, the MSRP would be $99.99, $100. Sometimes they would go up to $120, sometimes they'd go down to like $85 to $90, and that's just normal, right? The MSRP was $100, but that didn't actually have any effect on the actual price. That was just a suggestion, and the secondary market would actually determine the price based on supply and demand. Now, when Wizards of the Coast announced that they were removing MSRP, the thing that people seem to be confused about is that people thought that without MSRP, that the market would completely determine the price of products. So for example, like Modern Horizons, it's a $200 box. Typically, you might find it for $190, you might find it for $210, but it's a $200 box of Magic, and people thought that without MSRPs, that it might go down to a regular booster box price of $100, and that's where people seem to be a little bit confused, because you have to realize that even if there's no MSRP, Wizards of the Coast still dictates the price of the products based on how much they sell it for through distributors. So for example, your local gaming store buys a booster box probably for around $80, maybe as low as $75, maybe as high as $85, and then they flip it to you for $100 and make, very little profit. Magic products are not very profitable. It's not a good margin at all, but the point is they buy it for like 80 or so, they sell it for 100. If they're lucky, they make 20 bucks. It's not very much. It's definitely not enough to stay in business, but whatever. But anyway, when they buy Modern Horizons boxes, they're not buying them for $80. They're buying them for, from what I've heard, around $160 to $170. So that's the thing, right? People thought that the market would dictate the price. Well, that's not entirely true, because local gaming stores are still buying them for a set price. They're still buying them right now for roughly $160, and that's why it's a $200 box. Just because there are no MSRPs doesn't mean it's like the Wild West where there's no rules and then there's no guarantee what the prices are. Wizards of the Coast still dictates the price. They still determine what the price will be just based on how much they sell it to local gaming stores and retailers and whatnot. So Modern Horizons will never sell at less than probably $160. I mean, the only way you'll see it below $160 is if a retailer is going out of business and they're just liquidating a product to try to, recover some of their funds, then yeah, maybe. But realistically, on average, it's probably never going to go below 160 to 170 or so. It also depends on if distributors need to liquidate, and there's a lot of stuff to it, but the point is, it does have a predetermined price. Even if it doesn't have an MSRP, the MSRP is just a public price that's, kind of pushed out to consumers, and without that, that doesn't mean that the price still isn't predetermined. It is, we just don't know about it ahead of time. Another thing that people seem to be confused about in regards to this is that people seem to think that this would be better for local gaming stores because they could mark up their product because people didn't have an expectation of a certain MSRP. Like if Wizards of the Coast said an MSRP was going to be $30 on a product, if a local gaming store said it at $35, then they would get, a lot of ridicule unethical, and people would accuse them of being terrible business people who are trying to rip off the customers. And so by just not releasing an MSRP, people can ultimately sell it at whatever price they want. And because of that, there were some people who are saying this was really good for local gaming stores. Unfortunately, that's not really the case, because the biggest issue with local gaming stores wasn't the fact that they weren't charging enough for the product. It was that they couldn't charge as little for the product as online retailers. Basically, online retailers can work with smaller profit margins because they don't have overhead. Plus, really big online retailers, or just, your Amazons and whatnot, can buy the product in such large masses that they can sometimes get a discounted price. And so it's just impossible for your local gaming store to compete with online prices. It's difficult. So not having an MSRP doesn't fix that at all. If your local gaming store raises the price, that doesn't, people are still going to buy it online. That's sort of the problem. And this doesn't fix that at all. This doesn't fix the online retailer problem when it comes to local gaming stores trying to sell products with some kind of a profit, which it's really hard to do. So let's be clear about this. The only people who really benefit from this is Wizards of the Coast, because all it really does is it absolves them of blame if a product isn't worth the price that it's being sold for. Previously, they would release a product and maybe it would contain an expected value of like $50. I'm just making up random numbers, but maybe a product has an expected value of $50, but then they try to set the MSRP at $75, and the player base, and creators like me would be like, why would anyone buy that? Why would you pay $75 for $50 worth of cards? But now they can, put $50 worth of cards in a box, sell it to your local gaming store for $50, and expect them to mark it up to $75. Otherwise, they can't make a profit. And then if they do that, then your local gaming store is to blame, not Wizards of the Coast, because Wizards of the Coast never publicly disclosed a price. So if it's overpriced, Wizards of the Coast can just be like, hey, we don't determine the prices. We didn't set the price. We just, moved the product and whatever. It's still on them. They still set the price based on how much they sell it to your local gaming store for. But because it's not, released publicly, then it kind of absolves them of blame. They can just kind of raise their hands and say, hey, we don't determine the price. And that's the only difference, really. So anyway, yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I just wanted to kind of hopefully clarify that a bit. The lack of MSRP does not mean that prices are going to be completely dictated by supply and demand. They will be affected by that, but they're still predetermined by Wizards of the Coast. And this isn't something that benefits your local gaming store because they still can't compete with online prices. So just wanted to clarify that confusion. Prices are still predetermined. Remember that. Wizards of the Coast still determines the prices of the products to some degree. Obviously, they will fluctuate, and after they go out of print, they will go up due to lack of supply. But when a product is first released, Wizards of the Coast still has a lot of say in what that product is being sold for, based on how much they sell it to retailers. So yeah, there you go, guys. Hopefully that helps. Hopefully that is useful information. Hopefully that clears up some confusion. That's all I have to say. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.